to the 1989 Act have been repealed.
I call the Right Honourable David Carter.
Madam Chairman, I hadn't realised until that contribution from the Minister of Finance that we had a particular clause in here about making sure that somebody capable and interested in these things can continue with the work after he or she reaches 70 years of age. And I now just wonder whether this is the reason why this legislation is before the House. Mr Winston, the Right Honourable Winston Peters has argued for many years on changes to the Reserve Bank Act every election campaign. And I suspect this time he's argued for it again, so of course that's why it's before the House. The de facto Prime Minister's got his wish and we're now amending the Reserve Bank Act. And maybe it's because he needs a job. At the end of 2020, he needs a job. Maybe that's the reason the legislation. So I just want the Minister to rise to his feet shortly and assure us that that's not the reason for the particular amendment that he's just alerted the committee stage 2. My second question relates to Schedule 3, Treasury Observer. And I want the Minister to answer a question here because we raised this issue at the Select Committee with some concern, but as opposition members, we're in a minority at that Select Committee and the Chairman does a very good job as a lackey of the Labor government, so our amendments go absolutely nowhere and the bill gets returned effectively unchanged despite very valuable constructive comments from opposition members. And in Clause 23, we as opposition members were worried about the wording, the Secretary to the Treasury must ensure that a Secretary, a Deputy Secretary of the Treasury or any other Treasury officer or employee is nominated to be a Treasury Observer. And we felt that this, after the Treasury's argued for so long to have the opportunity to be more involved in the Reserve Bank decisions, we argued that to put the words any employee was actually downgrading this position. We suggest it should be the Secretary or it should be a Deputy Secretary, and we argued therefore the words to come out any employee. Because I don't want a new fresh-faced graduate from Vic University coming in with a minor economics degree and then suddenly finding because he's a favourite of the Secretary or the Deputy Secretary, finding that he or she's in this position. So I want the Minister to assure us that for Treasury having argued for so long, 29 years in fact, to get more influence over the Reserve Bank, that the appointment of the Treasury Observer will indeed be somebody senior. I want an assurance from the Minister of that. And I think we should actually be moving an amendment and making sure that the words do change, so it should either be the Secretary or one of the Deputy Secretaries. This is an important position. Treasury's argued for it for years, and it should not be some junior, fresh graduate who gets into this position of being the Treasury Observer. So I'd really appreciate an answer to that. And while I'm on my feet, I do point out I did ask another question earlier of the Minister, which he didn't answer, and it's probably because he can't answer it. I want to know what maximum sustainable employment is. Well, he said he did answer it, but I don't think anybody on this side understood it, and I'd be very grateful. All right. Well, it's not our fault. The shrill from the Honourable Tracy Martin comes across. If it's explained in plain English so that we could understand it, and I do bear in mind we're in good company here because Adrian Orr, the current Governor of the Reserve Bank, couldn't understand what maximum sustainable employment is either. So if Grant Robertson could elucidate that, we'd be very grateful, even though, Madam Chair, I do acknowledge it's part 1 and not part 2.
Mr. Chair, Madam Chair, sorry.